Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and get things going. My name is Abby Moore. I am the communications coordinator for MBNA. Today we have Howard Goldstein speaking with us today. Howard has been an entrepreneur for 33 years and has spent the last 17 years of his career in the payment card industry. He's provided consulting services in many areas, including contract negotiations, expense reduction, PCI compliance, as well as software and equipment integration. He loves helping business owners improve their bottom lines and has been a regional director for Merchant Advocate since January of 2013. So, Howard, you're welcome to go.
Thank you. And I just tried to share my screen. It says hosted disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay.
So just have to enable that for me, and I'm going to share my
Mm-hmm.
screen.
Yep. Give me just a second.
No problem. Okay. We're going to share. And okay, can everyone see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, wonderful. So as I said, and thank you for that introduction, Abby, really appreciate it. I've got about a 15-20 minute presentation here. I'm going to share a little bit about who we are and what we do, of course, and how you could potentially improve your bottom lines in a really unique way. Share a little bit about my background, where I've been, and like to start off with a personal story, actually. So just to start off, I'd like to set the stage. Merchant Advocate is a very, very unique approach in that we help merchants save money on credit card processing fees without having to switch processors. It's very, very unique. There's thousands of companies out there that are selling processing. You guys probably get called all the time. I've been in the industry for 17 years, and I've seen a lot of things. So, and the founder of our company has been in the industry over 25 years. So basically, you're leveraging our expertise in this industry to be able to, again, save money without having to change processors. And by the way, just a housekeeping, if anyone has any questions, there's someone Joshua's trying to, okay, there we go. You can put it in the chat bar and we can address them at the end. I definitely leave time for Q&A. So um, I have a personal story of how I got burned by this industry. If we gave everyone the floor, you probably all would have a story about how you got burned by this industry. It's so incredibly common. But I had a cell phone retail store. I actually had hair under that hat there 23 years ago, and got into the wireless business before it was, as ubiquitous. Not everybody had, 10-year-old kids did not have phones back then in 2001. Now everyone has a phone, but I was in that industry, and like a new business, just like all of you started your businesses on a new business list. A person from the credit card processing world contacted me, and they explained this, that, and the other. It was all foreign language to me. I didn't understand anything, but all I know is 6 months later, I saw a line item on my bank statement for $42.23, and it had the letters LSE on it. And I was like, what is that? And after a few phone calls, I discovered that I had signed a 4-year lease for a Narit 2085. That terminal that you see there, some of you may recognize it. And it's been long, long retired. I spent over $2,000 for a machine that I could have bought for $200. And so I always ask everyone that I talk to, do you own or lease your equipment? Jot that down. We can talk after if you are leasing. Usually if people are leasing, they don't have good pricing as for their processing. But an interesting follow-up on this story, I ran into the sales rep 5 years later. I closed my, I actually sold to someone, but I closed it about 3 years in. It's a tough business to be in. But 5 years down the line, I ran into that rep. Her name happened to be Karen. I ran into her local restaurant. We did that, two-step double take, kind of recognizing each other. And I said, Karen, I got to ask you a question, man. How did you do that to me? How did you charge me 10 times what I could have bought that terminal for? And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, Howard, I was recently divorced and I had 3 kids to feed. And I said, Karen, you get points for honesty, but that's cold. and this industry is cold. Most people do not realize it's an unregulated industry. So these companies can charge you whatever they want, and they can raise the rates on you whenever they choose, and they can lease you equipment that cost you 4 to 10 times the value of the equipment. Karen was a good person. She was in a desperate situation. She was a nice person, but there's a lot of unnice people in this industry that are taking advantage of people, and we see it all day long. Okay. We are not a processor. Please make a special note of that. We do not want to do your processing. We're not a processor. We're an advocate. Our name is what we do. We advocate on your behalf. You're leveraging our expertise in this industry to get you the best possible program with your current provider. So the goal is to help you save without switching. Our data has shown, I always say about a third have a good program, 2/3 are candidates for our service. It's actually a little bit higher. About 72% of the businesses that we look at are candidates for our service. They are being overcharged. And I'll get into a little bit later what that actually, what constitutes being overcharged from a financial standpoint. We now analyze over $20 billion a quarter. And over the last 17 years, we've saved our clients over $300 million in gross savings. It is absolutely extraordinary what this industry is doing to merchants all across America in every single vertical. And I'm so excited to work with MBNA. We've been working with a number of your members. We've saved a number of them money, and we're excited to kind of expand. I always say I can't help people if they don't know that we exist. So that's really the purpose of this webinar, is so that you guys can learn about what we do and find out if you're getting overcharged or not. And that's really the goal here today, is just to simply give you an opportunity to find out if you're a candidate for a service, or quite frankly, if you have a good program. Which bucket are you in? The 1/3 that have a good program, or the 2/3 that could benefit from what we do? So this payment card processing ecosystem is a nightmare. They've got, Karen was in the lower right quadrant. She was with an ISO. It's called an independent sales organization, or a merchant service provider. Those are the people that sign you up into the system. But there's so many layers to it. There's gateways, there's acquirers and processors, there's issuers, the banks and financial institutions that actually issue the banks. And then, of course, the rails, if you will, that the train goes down, are the card networks: Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, and some of these others. But those are the 4 main ones. But JCB, Union Pay, there's some smaller card networks. And this is the life cycle of a transaction, right? When a customer comes in and gives you a card to pay for your services, to pay for a monument, that transaction can go through a gateway. It goes through a processor. It goes through the associations. It goes to the banks. Everywhere along the way, everybody's getting a piece of that pie, and that pie keeps growing and growing and growing. And the reality is the merchants are paying for the pie. That's the problem. Our goal is to put more of the money that's tied up in this system back into your pockets, again, without having to change processors. So our process is really straightforward and very simple. The first process is we analyze your statements. So you can send us 1 statement. If you can send us 3, great. The more data, the better. We can find more anomalies. We can find more, funky things going on that may only be on 1 month, but not on another, and some issues. I like bigger data pools to look at. And again, we're going to determine if you're a candidate for our service or not. That's what we do in our preliminary review. If you do choose to engage our service, we're going to do a deeper dive and give you a much more detailed estimate of the potential savings. But initially, we're just going to determine if you're a candidate for our service or not. If you are a candidate, we will go over our agreement and answer any questions you have. And by the way, there is no obligation to engage our service to send us the statements. Okay, very key point to make a note of as well. But if you are a candidate for a service, we will advocate on your behalf, trying to get you a best program. And then the third phase is we audit your account. That's really the key ongoing value to what you do, to what we do, because as I said, these companies can raise the rates on you whenever they choose. And many of you probably have noticed your rates go up over time if you've been doing this for a while. Okay, so the statements. I always say these statements might as well be written in Egyptian hieroglyphics, right? They're impossible to be able to understand if you don't come from this industry, right? We don't just look at pricing. Pricing, I call it the 5 Ps. We look at pricing. but we also look at procedural errors. If you don't enter the proper information into the system, usually on card not present transactions, you can be charged up to and beyond a full percentage point in surcharges. We also look, make sure you're properly coded. That's usually not an issue in your industry. We look at PCI compliance, and we can talk about this at the end if anyone's interested in what PCI compliance is. Basically, the industry set a bunch of standards that you have to adhere to and attest to. Excuse me, attest to. And if you don't do that, they can charge you anywhere from $20 a month to $150 a month for not filling out a survey. Very important to address that. And there's also opportunities to what I call process optimization. Okay. And we could talk about that a little bit more. But again, if you're a candidate for a service, you give us permission to advocate on your behalf. Want you to clearly understand how we measure the savings. And this is actually an MBNA member. They had multiple locations. They did 68,534, okay, post-negotiation. And their old net rate, what we also call the baseline net effective rate, from which we measure the savings, was 3.33. We see a ton of people in the 3 to 4 and even above 4% range, and even above 5%, okay? It's very, very common, okay? This is what they would have paid. We do a very simple before and after picture. What you would have paid at the old net rate in this example was $22.82, and we just crushed a home run for these guys. What they actually paid after our adjustments, cleaned up PCI compliance, procedural surcharges, all the things that I mentioned, we lowered their rate, I believe it was 46%, and got them down to 1.8% and saved them over $1,000 in this first month. Now, a couple of key points here. The 1.8% was their program optimized. I have some clients that are closer to 3% optimized and some that are lower than 1.8. I don't want you to focus on that 1.8. It depends on the mix of card types that you take. They happen to take more debit cards, which are less expensive to process, but you also have to be, we negotiate the best pricing structure to make sure that those debit card rates come in as low as possible. It's a very complicated algorithm, but I don't want you to, we can't get that rate for everyone. It's just their rate was optimized for their particular mix of cards. The gross savings. This is a performance-based business model. If we only win if you win. This is a true win-win business model. We are only paid out of savings. If we don't save you money, there is no charge for our attempt to do so. So there's truly no downside risk to engaging our service and seeing what we could do. The worst case scenario, you pay your current company what you're paying them. That's the beauty of what we do and why the MBNA partnered with us. They want us to help the rest of their members. So this is, as I said, a win-win. We normally share in the savings 50-50. But as an MBNA member, we do a 60-40 split in your favor. So this member, for seeing my 15-20 minute presentation today, going over, they were a candidate. They sent us their statements right away. Sure, I'll get a free analysis. They sent us their statements. They were a candidate. We had the 30-minute meeting. We went over the agreement. It just made sense. Just check, check, check. We advocated on their behalf. We had a successful negotiation. And by the way, we'll introduce you to your negotiator. So that was another 15 minutes. And then we go over this report. It's a little over an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes of their time. And we put nearly $8,000 on their bottom line without having to change processors. Now, I just want to make a quick note. If you are not happy with your processor and you do want to change processors, we can make recommendations and help you navigate these shark-infested waters, okay? So if you do, but the whole goal, that's always a plan B. The whole goal here is to help you save money without having to change anything, okay? So the third phase of what we do is we audit your account. This is an example of a client that we were saving just about over $8,700 a year. Now, the initial term of our agreement is a 36-month term, because we catch rate increases all the time. After that initial term, no obligation to continue, but we catch rate increases in year 4, 5, 6, I just had a client with that. I need to make this a case study in my presentation because it was so amazing. They were with us, actually. They were a small account. We saved them just over $6,000 or so, close to $7,000 over 6 years. And they were so appreciative of what we do because we caught rate increases over the years. Late in their sixth year, one rate increase would have increased their fees by over $7,000, would have wiped out everything that we had done for them over the previous 6 years. So this is an example of a client 18 months into the audit, we caught a rate increase, got back on the phone and say, excuse me, this is a Merchant Avid client. We eliminated it. Rate increase number 2, 6 months later, we eliminated it. Our efforts prevented the client's process from charging more than $6,300 in additional annual fees. And again, after the initial term, there's no obligation to continue. You want to look at your program in year 4, 5, 6, 7? Absolutely, no problem at all. You do not have to, it goes to a month-to-month basis after the initial term. Okay, great testimonial. I don't know how many of you know Ryan Worthington. She used to be the president of the MBNA. Now her husband is. I love this testimony. We helped reduce their rates by 38%. But she was a little skeptical. I love skepticism. People do their homework. She did her research. She spoke to a colleague, one of the other members that we helped. And she even called her processor to do this on her own. She got some savings, but nothing like we were able to do. So it was just a really great quote because it covers so many points. So she really addressed the challenges with doing this on your own. Let me give you another case study here. Okay, I love case studies because they're real life examples. This was not an MBNA member. This was a very large client, actually, in the orthodontic world. It was a very large orthodontic practice. 2020, one of the owners saw my presentation. They engaged our service. As I did my discovery, I learned that the manager had tried to do this on her own 2 years prior. She did okay. She got this is a very large practice, obviously. She got $42,000 in savings. Okay. We looked at their statements. They were getting killed. So this is one of the processors. There's just a small handful of processors that don't want to negotiate directly with Merchant Advocate or any third-party expert in this arena. Why? Because we level the playing field. We give you a strategic advantage that you wouldn't have on your own, and that's why they don't want to talk. So what do? I personally did this. I take a lot of pleasure in knowing that this practice, this merchant service provider had no idea how this practice manager became so smart about the credit card processing business because I was ghostwriting the emails for her. She just copied and pasted them, send them off. It comes back. She sends them to me. I interpret their email. Give her the reply. So I basically held her hand through the process. First 12 months post-negotiation, we saved them another $149,000. Exactly what Ryan experienced, what I have find often, and the data shows it. Our merchants will get about 20 cents on the dollar, okay? 42,000 out of almost 200,000, 20 to 25 cents, give or take, on the dollar of the savings that are actually able to be realized. And this is what killed me. They were with their processor for 12 years getting this kind of overcharge. So December of 22. So they were with us for just about 2 years. They got their rates increased by over $3,000. We were able to eliminate that rate increase with our renegotiation and prevented them from getting charged an additional $37,000 a year. So I always tell people, get your annual checkup. If you haven't gotten one in a while, it's totally free. Find out if you're getting overcharged. This is an example of someone, they had a great program in 2017, didn't get their annual checkup. August of 22, they reached out to me with the same processor. We can now save them more than $19,000 a year. I use the boiling frog metaphor. You put a frog in a cool pot of water and you turn the heat up slowly and it adjusts its temperature, its body temperature until the water is boiling. That is a metaphor for this industry. They don't raise your rates dramatically. They raise it tiny bits over time. So find out if you're getting overcharged. This is our process. Send us your latest 3 months of statements. If you want to just send us one, it's totally fine. Again, I like more data for my team to look at. One of our analysts will do a preliminary analysis. We'll have results within 4 business days. in gross annual savings, you're going to keep 100% of that. I'm going to give you some free advice. So you can come away from this engagement with us with hundreds or even over $1,000 in savings. We have to find at least $2,000 in gross savings for you to realize 1,200 in net savings. Okay. And the candidate for a service, again, more than $1,200 in potential net annual savings. We'll do a 30-minute meeting, as I described, to go over our agreement, answer any questions that you have. If you choose to engage your service, we'll introduce you to one of our negotiators within 4 days. We'll perform that line-by-line detailed analysis and provide you with the potential annual savings figure. And a successful negotiation can take 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes less. Just really depends on your processor and their responsiveness. So with that, I'm just under 20 minutes, just like I had planned. This is my contact information. You can call me, you can email me, but I also want you to know we have a landing page for the MBNA on our website. Come here. You can fill in this information. You can upload, you can email me your statements, or you can upload them right here. You can choose choose the file right from your computer. It gets loaded into our system, gets tagged as an MBNA member, etc. And I'll contact you right away because I get a notification. And you can peruse around our website. You can see some video testimonials and what a bunch of our other clients have said about us. Some of the other partner associations that we work with other than the MBNA. And we work with a number of them, CPA associations, the Red Sox. We work with professional baseball team and, small mom and pop businesses. It's across the entire United States economy. Anyone who takes credit cards could potentially benefit from what we do. And we have some wonderful videos here as well that explain what we do in more detail. But with that, I also want to say this is a link to my calendar, this QR code. If any of you want to schedule a meeting with me, please feel free to do that. And I welcome the opportunity to see if we can create a win-win scenario here and help you put some money on your bottom line. So with that, I will open it up to questions. And Abby, again, thank you so much for this opportunity to share what we do with so many members. So does anyone have any questions? If you want to take people off mute, Abby, if you can, or if you all want to come off mute, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
What would you consider a good percent, if you're getting, I saw in the thing in your presentation that somebody was paying 3.3% in fees, and then you knocked it down to like 1.8, I think is what it was.
Right.
What if you're already getting that 1.8? Is that, I'm assuming that's great.
You probably have a good program, but let's check it out. Interestingly enough, I have a client in rural North Carolina. Who, we got them down to 1.29%, but they were an anomaly. Okay, on a bell curve, they are not common. I did a deep dive on that. I'm like, what the heck is going on with this, right? Usually we see, like I said, above 3%. And, our target is to get people between 2 and 3%. But why was he so low? 60% of his cards were debit cards. And if you're on the right pricing structure, you will have a much lower rate. If you're not on the proper pricing structure, you could take a lot of debit cards and still be high. So let's take a look. If you've got a good program, again, if you're not a candidate, I'm going to tell you, because we're not going to waste your time, and we're not going to waste ours. We're not going to waste anybody's time. So, but usually if I see 1.8, I'm going to tell you got a pretty good program. But we still might be able to save you a few $100s if I see an anomaly here or there on your statements. That's what's beautiful about what we do.
Would you want those statements emailed?
Yep. You can email in, directly to my email right here, hgoldstein@merchantadvocate.com. And I'll reply and when on my reply, you're going to have a link to my calendar. What I ask is that people schedule a meeting with me 4 business days out. We're going to do that preliminary analysis. We have a very, very rhythmic way of taking people through the process. We don't want to drag this out for you. Everybody's busy. So we'll do a meeting 4 days out. You have a calendar. You can book it out 2 weeks if that's better for you. Whatever it is, put that on the calendar. And I'll come back with either, hey, you got a good program. I'll give you the 2 thumbs up and get some fireworks. We got some fireworks. Look at that. Um, and, that's the new Apple operating system. I learned that by accident. I put 2 thumbs up and all of a sudden I got fireworks. Anyway, but if you're a candidate for service, so I always ask if people can book a 30-minute meeting in case you are a candidate. We've got that time. I always schedule an hour, just so in case people have more questions, but we won't need more than 30 minutes. I'm trying to be very, very efficient with people's time.
Okay.
Right. So do we have any questions in the chat bar, or anyone else have any questions?
I have a question, if you can hear me.
Sure.
I'm not sure if this is related or not, but is it legal for us to charge fees to our customers to utilize a credit card?
I was thinking the same thing.
I know in the past, in the fine print of a lot of
What's that?
processors, in the fine print, a lot of the processors say that we cannot because it's a deterrent to utilizing a credit card. But I've seen other people lately say that they are allowing them to do that.
Okay, great question. I'm really glad that you asked that. And what you were talking about, if we were having this conversation 7 years ago, the answer would have been absolutely no. Philip, if you can please, Philip, I work with Philip. He's in this webinar. I need to find out when the surcharge programs, and they're called cash discount or surcharge programs. I need to find out exactly what year they went into effect. All of a sudden they popped up. It's been a few years now. Basically, now there's a couple of states where you can't do some of these programs. So if you contact me, email me, and we can follow up on this conversation. But basically, the long and short of it is that businesses in America can add what we call a surcharge. And what you do is you get there's 3 different types of programs. There's a surcharge program, a cash discount program, and something called dual pricing. And I could do a whole half hour on all 3 of these, but just in general, basically, if you have a surcharge program, you have to post a sign in your business that says, we are adding 3% or 3.5%. When these programs first came in, people were charging like 5%, and they put some restrictions in. Some states have passed laws that you can't add more than 3%. So let's take a look at whatever state you're in to see what the specifics are. But the idea is that you charge your customer $100 through your machine or through your virtual terminal, and it adds, in this example, we'll use 3%. It adds $3. You charge them $100. It will charge them $103. The merchant service provider then takes that $3 off the top and pays whatever the processing fees are. You keep your $100 like you did before. So basically, you're saving all of your credit card processing fees. But here's the problem. They're not passing along what you're getting charged. They're charging 3 and 4 and 5% in some cases. I just came across a cash discount program where the company, it's another form of this. I won't go into the variants. We can talk about it later, but they were going to be charging the customers of this restaurant an extra 6%. It was highway robbery. Okay. So that's not even allowed in most states. So you have to make sure that you're doing these things properly, because if you don't set them up properly, you can get fined by MasterCard, Visa, Discover. So I'm happy to help you navigate those waters and give you advice on how to do it properly. Okay. And I have some resources at my disposal that can help you. The dual pricing, real quick, just to finish on that, is they call it the gas station analogy, where on your machine, they actually it says credit price, cash price. So they get to choose which one they want to pay with. And that's becoming more of the common, just because you're giving the customer a choice instead of just charging them the surcharge. So does that all make sense? Does that answer your question?
So on the dual pricing, is that they would be charged the cash price if they're utilizing a debit card? Or does that
No.
apply to a credit card?
Only if they pay with cash. This is where you get into some of the complexities. If you have a surcharge program, again, I don't want to muddy the waters, but on a surcharge program, the customer gets charged 3%, But when they use a debit card, you as the merchant get charged 1.25% and 25 cents, right? On the dual pricing, that charges the extra fee, whatever it is, to both debit and credit cards. And they only pay the cash price when they pay the cash. There's some subtle differences. Again, this is where I'm happy to be a resource for you. You got to set them up properly. And depending on the state you're in, like if you're in Massachusetts, I know you can't do cash discount prices in the state of Massachusetts. So there's a lot of legislation that's come down the line to try to regulate this because people are abusing it left and right. So just so you're
Okay.
aware.
Great,
Okay?
thank you.
You're very welcome. And please reach out to me. I'm happy to have a further conversation on that. So,
Howard,
Yeah.
2011 is when they started, it became legal.
Okay, great. Wow, it goes back much further than I was even aware. Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that.
The Durbin Amendment, it started.
Okay, very good, very good. So they didn't pick up steam until they've really caught fire in the last few years. So, but does anyone else have any questions? And we could talk about PCI compliance if you want, if anyone's interested. Does everyone know what PCI compliance is?
I hate it.
I'm not
So
laughing at
annoying.
you, but Lori, I get that all the time. It is a
God.
real pain. Yeah. So in a nutshell on PCI compliance, and then anyone who's drop off, please, I totally appreciate you joining, but I'll just give you a quick tutorial on PCI compliance. The payment card industry, if you go to PCIsecuritystandards.org, the Security Standards Council created all of these best practices that every merchant in America has to adhere to, more importantly, attest to. If you don't fill out the survey, you can be charged a PCI non-compliance fee. We see PCI non-compliance fees as little as $19.95, and there's a company out there I see on a regular basis charges $125. Another company charges $149.99. And when I asked that client the other day, were you even aware? Did your processor even tell you about PCI compliance? They said absolutely not. So they were getting charged $1,800 a year because they didn't take a half hour to fill out a survey. Now, if you process over the internet, okay, you also have to get your network scanned and pass the scan in order to be considered compliant. What they do is the company that that your processor contracts with to do the PCI compliance, they will scan what's called the 443 port, which is the external port into your computer network. They don't go into your network. They just want to make sure that you have all of your firewalls in place and your SSL certificate is up to date and your TLS, it's called AAA layer security, is 3.4 instead of 2.4 or whatever. It's all of these different standards. And if you don't pass that scan, it gives you all of the remediations to actually become compliant. But once you complete the survey, which you have to do once a year, you have to get your network scanned once a quarter. So you got to do it 4 times a year. It's not enough to pass the scan. You also have to attest to passing the scan. They give you one more hurdle to go over. So you
See why I hate them?
It's this industry. I'm just telling you like it is. This industry is making millions of dollars managing PCI compliance because you're charged an annual fee just to even be able to fill out the survey, but untold millions upon millions of dollars of people not being compliant and quite frankly, not even knowing that they needed to fill out that survey. So it's definitely an area that we look at. I'm happy to look at that with you and help you navigate those waters as well. So Laura, you've had some experience with PCI.
Security metrics is
Okay.
we had PCI compliance through security metrics.
Were you able to achieve compliance?
Yeah, because it's a whole lot easier when you don't take credit cards over the internet.
Amen.
It's
No
so
question
much
about it.
easier. Like that's one reason why I refuse to take. I refuse because the stuff you have to go through, like what you just said, is a nightmare. And for a small office with only 2 people, I would just spend my whole day messing with that stuff. And so we just, we take credit cards over the phone. They're higher fees, but we have Clover processor now, machine that can travel around the office and stuff, but we don't, yeah.
Well,
It was,
let's take a look at that, because when you process over a phone line, you
yeah,
fill
it's
out what's called an SAQ, self-assessment questionnaire.
Mhm.
SAQ-B is what you need to fill out. And yes,
Yes.
it's like 12 questions or 15 questions. It's the shortest one because the bad guys haven't figured out how to hack the phone lines, right? It's actually the safest way to process cards.
It
But
is.
I want you to understand, there is a way to process over the internet with a lot of cool features, as long as you're using a company that utilizes something called point-to-point encryption. And we can have a longer conversation about this later if you like, Lori. Just,
Okay.
schedule a meeting with me. But we have resources to companies that do that. And basically what that is they use a patented tokenization technology that encrypts the data before it passes over your computer network. So you get the benefits and the speed and the features of processing over the internet without having to get your network scanned. It's very,
Okay.
very cool. So, but it's a very high-end technology, but very affordable equipment. Again, if your company may have that, we can explore that together. Again, I want you to stay with who you're with. We just have to
Excuse me.
explore, what options you actually have. So, but there are ways of doing that. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So how are we charged, or who are we charged by if we are not PCI compliant? I have literally never heard of this.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
Obviously, my processor has not told me anything about this.
If I had $1 for everyone that told me that, it is just, it's malfeasance on this industry's part. You would look on your statement, and this is what I'll
Mhm.
do when I look at your statements. You're going to look for, it should be on your statement, and it'll say PCI non-compliance or PCI non-validation. Some companies, this is another little trick that they do. They don't charge you every month. So if you look on 1 month, you'll see the PCI non-validation or PCI non-compliance fee. Some companies charge every quarter. So if you don't look on the January or April or whatever on the statement 4 times a year when they charge you, then you wouldn't even notice, right? So that's why I ask people to send me 3 months of statements so that we can find these fees that aren't charged on every. So you would be charged by your merchant service provider on your statement. It's a third-party company, but it charges through your merchant service provider on your statement. And again, and who was that? I didn't see who asked that question.
It's
Pamela, I think.
Pamela? Okay, Pamela, yeah, I'd be happy to take a look and point out that line item, and then we can call your company and figure out, okay, who do you contract with? Is it Security Metrics, or is it Sysnet, or there's a whole bunch of different companies. And then what's your process? Well, you log into this website and you register, and then you get a username and password, and then they usually have, steps to walk through. And I usually walk through it with my clients, and the reason that I do is because it's a nightmare, like Lori has experienced. And my clients usually wind up calling me, practically in tears because they're so frustrated. The last time someone called me like that, I was working with a hospital, and like their booster organization. She was retired. She was, later in life. She wasn't very technologically savvy. She may have been in her 80s. She was a lovely, lovely woman, and she went down the wrong path. If you don't fill out the questionnaire properly, you will fill out an SAQ-D. She needed to fill out an SAQ, I think C, that had like 30 questions. The questionnaire she went to, 300 questions, and she was a trooper. She was in it for like 3 hours, and she finally called me, and I was like, oh my goodness. And I got on the phone with her, and we took care of it in like a half hour. And I was like, that's when I decided I'm just going to help my clients. It's a little something that I can do to help you get through that piece of, and every single merchant, this is a requirement. Okay. So it's really, really unfortunate that your company didn't tell you about that. So Pamela, I'm happy to help you figure out how to get PCI compliant. Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very
Are there
welcome.
any last questions? I want to respect everybody's time.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Howard, so much for taking the time to meet with us. We appreciate you being an affinity partner with us. And,
Thank you.
if anybody has any questions or anything for Howard, like I said, take his information there. And I appreciate you all being on this call. And I hope you guys take advantage of your MBNA member benefit.
All right.
Thank you all.
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you. Take care.
Mhm.